I do a huge amount of work in Alzheimer's and caregiving, and had a father who had Alzheimer's for 9 years, simultaneously a mother who was having strokes and breaking her hip, and 4 children, and I was First Lady at the time. And I talk to a lot of people who are spending a huge amount of time taking care of their parents, and that there's like there's just not enough time in the day, right? So do we kind of need to redefine our power, redefine kind of success, and really kind of take a step back and say, look, if people are living longer, people are, their wages are somewhat stagnant, they're taking care of kids, they're taking care of parents, they're taking care of their core. I mean, how do we manage all of this?
Well, I think, Maria, it's what you clearly laid out in those extraordinary reports you've been doing. We have huge societal needs, and it's going to take everybody to be a part of the solution. Many of the difficulties that we find, particularly for women in the workplace today, are defined by the assumption that were laid down decades ago, which is women stayed home, and they weren't in the formal workplace. They worked mighty hard at home, but they weren't in the formal workforce. Today, that's upside down. It's completely in a different place. But we have not made the changes that we need to make. We're the only industrialized country in the world that has no paid family leave. We have a hodgepodge.
We do here in California.
Well, California, yes, leading the way.
Yeah.
But we have a hodgepodge in terms of child care, both in terms of affordability and quality. These are significant issues for this nation. They have enormous implications, and we're still describing them as marginal women's issues. And that's what has to change. And I think beyond that, the whole issue of equal pay for equal work and some of the other huge gender separations that you described are critical. Imagine a single breadwinner who is not getting the 21 cents on every dollar, and what that means to her own existence and her family's. Again, does this issue have the prominence it should have? But that's what we're saying, that we all can be part of that solution in some ways, if but pressuring our decision makers.
So I'm looking around this room, and which is great, people of all ages here. And I, for one, know that your purpose and your passion and your sense of power changes as you age, right? So I have 2 20-some-year-old daughters, and they feel very differently about the work world, perhaps, than I did when I was 30 or 20. So what would you say to the 20-somethings that are in here about what they have to look forward to? And what would you say to the many women that I talk to that might be in their 50s and 60s who feel like the world doesn't even see them or recognize them, and that they feel really powerless, actually, as they age?
You want me to go?
Well, I would say to the 20-somethings, they're already defining the world that is in the process of being created. We've spoken to many CEOs in the process of writing this book, and they have told us that as the new talent is coming into the jobs market, they're saying to the potential hirer, what is the purpose of your company beyond making widgets? What do you really believe in? How are you committed to diversity and inclusion? What commitment do you make to ensuring that your employees have balance in their lives, or whatever word is adequate to describe leading a holistic life? What one CEO said to me is, look, we're a bunch of 50-year-old guys. We've never had to confront these problems before. We are not going to have the talent pool that we need to move our companies forward. And these are very forward-looking, successful companies. So I think change is already occurring. You can't go to campuses today and not see the vibrancy that is represented in what students are interested in how they're going to combine what they're learning and create a much different environment in many ways.
I mean, I think for me, my advice is probably the same to all groups at this point. I mean, I think that, of course, where you sit and what you're doing and your age sort of changes your perspective, but I think everything's about perspective, ultimately. And so what we value, and again, what we allow to define the way we think about ourselves, the way we measure happiness, because ultimately everything's about expectations, right? Where you've measured up to the expectations you're setting for yourself, or that, frankly, the media in some instances is setting for you, or your social environment. And so I was on this panel recently with these two professors of happiness who I think I alluded to earlier. One of them wrote the history of happiness, so that's a little bit intimidating to be sitting next to, starting with Aristotle. And the other one wrote The Way We Work, that recent book by Bear Schwartz, which I think is excellent. But really what I think we all took away after the research we did for our book was that really everything is about how you define your own success and how you feel you're measuring up. And I think it's really important for us to challenge what we bring into especially for young people. I would start with the 20-year-olds, because I think you can't just take in everything and assume everything has the same value. You have to choose how you're defining success for yourself.